The curious minds of high IQ individuals. 8 weird habits. Picture this. You're sitting across from someone who has scored in the top 1% of every cognitive test. You're expecting composed, confident, maybe a little intimidating, someone who always has the right answer, and then they spend for minutes looking for their phone, which was in their hand. This is the reality. The popular image of the high IQ individual is one of the most persistent and misleading myths in psychology. The truth, when you look at the research, is far more interesting, human, and relatable than the myth. Because here's what the data actually shows. The people with the highest measured intelligence are not walking around feeling like geniuses. They are walking around feeling like they're one bad day away from being exposed as a fraud. They are losing sleep over something mildly embarrassing they said at a party 3 years ago. They are overwhelmed by loud restaurants. They are talking to themselves in parking lots. And they have cursed more times today than you probably have this entire week. So let's get into it. 8 of the most fascinating, documented, and surprisingly relatable habits of people with very high IQs. And as we go, pay attention to how many of these sound uncomfortably familiar. Habit 1. They doubt themselves constantly and brilliantly. The most consistent finding across research on high cognitive performers is they dramatically underestimate their own ability. This is not false modesty. It is a genuine, structural feature of how their minds assess themselves. The more deeply someone understands a subject, the more vividly they can see everything they still don't know. Mastery reveals complexity, and complexity reveals gaps. So the person with the deepest understanding is most aware of how vast that field actually is. Meanwhile, the person with surface-level knowledge sees none of those gaps, because they don't know enough. This is sometimes called the Dunning-Kruger effect in reverse. And it means that the smartest person in the room is frequently the one most convinced they don't belong there. The same cognitive machinery that makes them analytically gifted also makes them devastatingly good at building internal arguments against themselves. They can construct a detailed, logically coherent case for their own inadequacy at a moment's notice. The smarter they are, the more convincing that case becomes. Habit 2. They are almost always night owls. This one is not a lifestyle preference. It is neurological. Research found that individuals with higher intelligence consistently go to bed later and wake up later, even when controlling for work schedules, social obligations, and external pressures. The ability to override your natural circadian rhythm for self-chosen, abstract reasons is considered a novel human behavior, and it appears to correlate with higher general intelligence. The practical consequence is that many highly intelligent people are living in a state of chronic, low-grade sleep deprivation. They are wired for a schedule that the world was not built around. They get labeled as lazy or undisciplined, when in reality their biological clock is simply set differently. They do their best thinking when everyone else has gone to bed, and they pay for it every single morning. Habit 3. They talk to themselves out loud. This one makes people laugh, but the research behind it is genuinely solid. Private speech, the formal term for self-directed verbal thinking, is a powerful tool for cognitive regulation and problem solving. Saying something out loud forces the brain to process it differently than simply thinking it internally. It slows down the thought, externalizes it, and creates a kind of dialogue between the speaker and the idea. For people whose minds are running at high speed across multiple tracks, this verbal externalization is not a quirk, it is a tool. High IQ individuals tend to experience language as a mechanism for thinking, not just communicating. So when there is no one to think alongside, the conversation still happens. It just happens out loud, alone, occasionally in a supermarket aisle, which requires a very quick pivot to pretending you are on a phone call. Hello, friend. Let's talk about something many of us experience, but often misunderstand: anxiety. It's not just a feeling. It's a complex response, a signal from our incredible minds. Imagine your brain as a super smart protector, constantly scanning for potential threats. For some, this protector is extra vigilant, seeing shadows where there are none, or amplifying small concerns into towering worries. This isn't a flaw. It's often a sign of a deeply thoughtful and imaginative mind. Anxiety can manifest in many ways. Perhaps it's that racing heart before a presentation, or the endless what-ifs that keep you awake at night. It might be the feeling of being overwhelmed in a crowded room, or the struggle to focus on simple tasks when your mind is buzzing with bigger concerns. Sometimes, it even makes us forget the little things, like where we put our keys. It's not forgetfulness. It's your brain prioritizing, deeply engaged with complex thoughts. leaving less room for the mundane. But here's the important part. You are not alone, and these feelings, while intense, are manageable. Understanding anxiety is the first step towards befriending it. When anxiety strikes, try to ground yourself. Focus on your breath, a simple anchor in a stormy mind. Engage your senses. What do you see, hear, smell, taste, touch? This brings you back to the present moment. Remember, your mind is powerful. It can create worries, but it can also create calm. Be kind to yourself. Acknowledge the feeling without judgment. Seek support from friends, family, or professionals. Anxiety doesn't define you. It's a part of your unique experience, and with understanding and compassion, you can learn to navigate its currents. You've got this. Here is something that does not get said enough. Being highly intelligent is not a superpower. It is not a cheat code. It is not a guarantee of success, happiness, peace of mind, or even basic daily functionality. It is a particular way of processing the world, one that comes with genuine advantages, yes, but also with a very specific and largely invisible set of costs that most people never acknowledge, because the story we tell about intelligence does not have room for those costs. The story we tell goes like this: smart people have it figured out. Smart people do not struggle with the things ordinary people struggle with. Smart people are supposed to take their natural gifts and convert them cleanly into achievement, confidence, and ease. And if they are not doing that, if they are anxious, scattered, sleepless, overwhelmed, then something has gone wrong. They are wasting their potential. They should try harder. They should be more disciplined. They should, somehow, be better at being themselves. That story is not just wrong. It is genuinely harmful, because what it does is take a person who is already fighting a quiet internal war against self-doubt, against a nervous system that processes everything too intensely, against a brain that will not slow down long enough to let them rest, and it adds guilt on top of all of it. You have every advantage, the story says. So why are you still struggling? And the answer, which nobody tells you, is that the advantages and the struggles come from exactly the same place. They are not separate things. The same depth of processing that makes a high IQ individual capable of remarkable insight is what makes them lie awake catastrophizing at 3 a.m. The same sensitivity that allows them to pick up on nuance and complexity that others miss is what makes a loud room feel like an assault. The same relentless internal monologue that helps them think through problems with precision is what makes them talk to themselves in a parking garage and forget to eat lunch. You cannot have one without the other. That is not a bug in the system. That is the system. And once you understand that, really understand it, not just intellectually, but in the way that settles something deep, a few things start to shift. You stop treating your anxiety like a character flaw and start recognizing it as a high-powered engine that needs the right fuel and the right direction. You stop being ashamed of the sleepless nights and start building a life that actually accommodates the way your brain naturally operates, instead of constantly fighting it. You stop interpreting your self-doubt as evidence that you are not good enough and start seeing it for what it actually is, a sign that you understand your field well enough to know how much further it goes. None of this means the hard parts get easy. They do not. But they become navigable in a completely different way when you stop treating them as failures and start treating them as information. The most important thing, and this is the thing worth carrying with you after everything else fades, is this: the profile described in this video is not a liability dressed up as a gift. It is not a burden with occasional upsides. It is a genuinely different way of being in the world, one that has produced some of the most original thinking, most important discoveries, and most transformative ideas in human history, not in spite of the anxiety and the doubt and the sleeplessness and the overwhelm, often directly because of them. The people who changed how we understand the world were rarely the most comfortable ones. They were the ones who could not stop thinking, who noticed things others walked past, who stayed up too late asking questions nobody else thought to ask, who doubted everything, including themselves, right up until the moment the answer became undeniable. That restlessness you carry, the one that makes everything feel slightly too loud, and slightly too urgent and slightly too much, it is not something to be fixed. It is something to be understood, respected, and ultimately pointed at something worth the effort. You already have the mind for it. The only question now is what you decide to do with it.